I feel like this vision of the metaverse or the experience of the metaverse, the way people are thinking about it right now, is so limited. I don't even understand why you would need a body.
Today we have Jessica Greenwalt with us, creative director at Vayner3, one of Gary Vee's companies. They're a Web3 consultancy. At Vayner3, Jess develops Web3 programs for some of the world's greatest brands. It's an absolute privilege to have you on the Green Room today and dive deeper into your impressive track record as a leader in the Web3 creative branding and user experience space. Thank you so much for joining us, Jess.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
That was a mouthful.
It was.
I was like, where is he going with this?
Would love if you could just kind of tell us about you and what you currently do and your past, your story.
Sure. I mean, that's a lot. But what I currently do is so many different random things. You know, I was thinking, someone asked me like, oh, what's an average day in your life right now? And I have no average days. I realize every day is wildly inconsistent. I don't even have a same wake up time. I was talking to my friend Peace earlier today, who drove up here to hang out with me in LA. And she has this morning routine where she gets up at some ungodly hour. I think it's like 5 a.m. and then goes swimming at 6 a.m. and like does all these things that are amazing. And then I'm like, I don't even know when I'm waking up tomorrow, you know? It totally revolves around when the first meeting is, and I could be talking to a brand that I've never worked with before or some other massive or multinational organization. I have no idea what each day is going to look like, and I just kind of plan on a day-by-day basis. Mm-hmm. So what I do right now is help the world's biggest brands come up with really cool shit to do that involves emerging technology. And the term Web3 has been expanded to be inclusive of so many things, including now AI, right? Mm-hmm. So anything that involves AI, the metaverse, AR, VR, blockchain technology, we get to play with and come up with fun stuff for brands to do.
How would you describe like Web3 and NFTs and like AI in your own words?
Oh, I like that description of Web3, that it encompasses all emerging technology, because that gives me more to play with. Right? Like yeah. I love variety and I love experimenting with new things. I like to see where we can push the envelope more. So I am happy that Web3 has become this blanket term for everything that people just don't understand right now.
Can you walk us through your experience in working with these Fortune 500 brands and kind of what that looks like? I know every brand you're probably working with in a different way, but what does that kind of look like?
Okay, so the space changes so quickly, and even just, I want to say, a matter of weeks ago, and my sense of time is so messed up because I work in the Web3 space. Like a day feels like a month and so on, right? But even a few weeks ago, we weren't even really talking about AI that much, right? And then now all of a sudden it's all AI all day, every day, right? So what happens next week, what people are all focused on next week, and what we are designing exciting experiences around, something else crazy might happen, right? And then that's what everyone wants to explore and talk about. But the nice thing is, one, it's super fun. This is never a dull moment. We always try to build for the long term. So no matter what it is, whatever trend that's crazy that's happening right now, it always has to build into or ladder up to this longer term program. It has to work for the overall narrative.
Cool. So do brands come to you and you help them determine what is this long-term narrative? And as all these new things come in, we're going to figure out how to interplay with it?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And where do you even find the time like to learn about all the new AI and the AI technology? What are the hot NFT projects right now? Like, what are the innovative things people are doing? Like, that
is an excellent question. I wonder this myself sometimes. Like, I'm questioning this as I just heard you ask that question. I'm like, okay, what does that look like in every free moment? You know, I'm on my phone, I'm on devices a lot. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm talking to friends constantly who are in the industry. Fortunately for me, a lot of my friends are in tech and they're building the technology that we're eventually going to be using. And we all kind of keep each other posted on updates that are coming, especially if we're like, oh, I really want to work with you on this, or like, oh, I have this really cool idea, but the technology isn't there yet. And then one of my friends could be like, I'm actually working on that, and be like, okay, when are you releasing that? And they're like, oh, maybe in 2 quarters, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. I think we're going to be able to work with this brand because there's this event that's also happening in 2 quarters and it'd be really cool to incorporate that, right? So we all keep each other informed. If it's something really exciting, then someone's gonna call me up and be like, hey Jess, I got this like crazy idea and we're hoping to release it soon. And likewise from my end too, if I'm like, oh, I just found out this really crazy thing, like I'll call up the people that I think it'll be relevant to and who I think would be fun to work with in the very near future. So fortunately, I have a network of nerdy friends like myself that just like to talk about this stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
My boyfriend's super overhearing anything about Web3 because that's like all he has to hear about anytime like I pick up the phone, anytime I'm out with my friends. So to answer your question, long story short, I live in the space, right? That's my whole life, and that's how I stay on top of this. And I can't stay on top of everything, right? Like I don't even know how you do that. I'm not a machine.
When did you even start getting interested in this space, and like what led you to like falling in love with it and deciding I want to put every ounce of my energy into being a part of this?
I tend to work with historically. So in the tech industry, what I'm usually brought on to do is study the way people behave and then make adjustments to a product to drive particular behaviors. So I'm not interested in a product or a space or working on that product or that space until there are enough people interacting with it to make it interesting for me. And at the end of 2020, I felt like there were going to be enough users in the what we now call Web3 space, like blockchain technology space, that it was finally going to be interesting for me. And I drew a line in the sand. I'm like, once the end of 2020 hits, I'm not going to work with any organizations that are not playing in the blockchain space, because that's where I see things going. And I want to experiment. I want to see what designing for users in that context is like. And so I asked around my friends. I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop everything, hard stop on everything I'm doing that isn't blockchain related, and I only want to work on Web3 stuff. Let's call it that. Not the term we used at the time. Who's the best person to learn from? And I got connected with this guy named Matt Marks, who's the founder of Fishfort, a cybersecurity company in the space. If there's a good person to learn from about blockchain technology, it's someone who runs a cybersecurity company. So we made this deal. They needed a UX person. And I was like, well, that's what I do. And he's like, there's no way we could afford to pay you what you're used to getting paid in your role. I'm like, that's fine. You pay me what you can and teach me everything you know. And he was very generous with his time, sat down with me, walked me through whatever stupid question I had or whatever platform I wanted to learn about, whatever token I wanted to learn about, everything. Anything that popped up, anything that he thought was really important. And then naturally, because he's got a security background, there was a whole lot of like, don't do this ever. Don't do this, like make sure you have this installed, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. So he kind of taught me everything I knew to get started. And then we got recruited. How long did that take? About 3 months. And then we got recruited by a major exchange to work on stuff for them behind the scenes. And then here's where it gets like really interesting, because this is such a Web3 world situation. So we're working for an exchange, and then an anonymous friend that I met on Clubhouse back in the day.
That disappeared real quick.
I think it's still a thing around amongst artists.
Yeah.
But this anonymous friend I made on Clubhouse asked me if I would meet with his anonymous friend, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll meet your anonymous friend. And that anonymous friend wanted to do a video call, which I thought was so weird for an anon, you know? I'm like, oh, okay, so is he just gonna show his face when we hop on this call? That's not what happened. I hop on the call, and on my screen is a digital clown face. And if you've ever seen the movie Saw, which is horrifying, and there's like this psychopath wearing a clown face talking to people through a screen, that's immediately what I thought of. And I'm looking at this digital clown face that the mouth moves when he talks, right? And I was just like, am I getting kidnapped? And he's he's like, no, this is this is my, you know, my character, whatever. I can't even remember what he said because I was so taken aback by it. And I'm like, I'm gonna be totally honest with you right now. This is some creepy shit. And he's like, oh no, and I'm sorry. Like we had a really nice conversation. He asked me some questions about what I was currently working on. And then I gave him some very open and honest feedback, which he appreciated. And then a few days later, the president of Vayner3, formerly Vayner NFT, it was Vayner NFT at the time. President of Vayner NFT at the time called me up and said, my friend said you need to be a part of this team that we're putting together.
Wow.
And that's how I ended up at Vayner3.
Anonymous clown call got you into.
Yeah. Like
Wow.
a series of anonymous people, right?
What do you think the reasoning is behind everyone wanting to be anonymous in the space?
Oh, I don't think they do anymore, right? Like
Yeah, but back
there's this
then-
whole push because it's highly experimental. We're dealing with financial assets that are being moved from country to country or wherever you needed them to be at the time, and the rules were not set, and you didn't know what the rules would be when they were formed. So better to be anonymous would be my guess. Yeah.
Gotcha.
What do you think is the future of Web3?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
Where do you see it going? I know it's hard to say.
I can tell you what irritates me and what I hope would be different.
Okay.
I feel like this vision of the metaverse or the experience of the metaverse and the way we describe it and the characters we have in it, way people are thinking about it right now is so limited. It's based on these past sci-fi books that have inspired guys who run tech companies now. They read about these experiences and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go build that, right? And it's such a limited view of what we could do with this technology. I don't even understand why you would need a body, like why you would need a character when you could be like floating consciousness in a world that doesn't have to adhere to the laws of physics. Why are we recreating the world we live in now with its flaws and even less of a interactive, immersive experience than we can have in the real world? Why don't we create something we can't experience on this plane, you know? So my hope is that the future of the experience in this space is something we've never seen before, something outside of current reality, something that I would only be able to experience if I plugged into that world.
Have you seen anyone that's like leading in that direction that like you would applaud or think they're onto something?
I think that people who design these immersive participatory art experiences that get you to think or feel or experience something because you are going through it firsthand yourself, like you experience it on another level. I think getting them more involved in building out what this future of online digital life would be like would start to create that experience more that I'm describing.
Gotcha. And I know you guys did like a big event at Art Basel. Were you seeing like any of those types of things there? Is that like where you mainly were participating in that stuff that got you thinking?
I was working a lot during Art Basel, so I didn't get to participate in maybe some of the crazier stuff. I actually didn't even hear anyone talk about immersive participatory art experiences. That's not to say they weren't happening. I was just in my zone of like, need to get these things done right now, right? And so the art experiences that I got to participate in at Art Basel, they were your standard, like, oh, go look at this sculpture, like massive rooms of paintings on walls. If there was that experience at Art Basel, I didn't get to see it.
Got it. Where have you seen those?
Oh, there was this place, and they're still in a couple different cities across the United States, called Wonder Spaces, that my friend helped start. And they'll go find these large spaces and then invite artists to create experiential installations that usually you as the viewer have to take part in, and if you are in the art piece, it changes based on you, right? So things like that, like wonder spaces. If there's a wonder space in your city, go visit it. So there was a wonder space in San Diego, and when I saw that it was there, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go explicitly make a trip to go see this wonder space. And they had gotten some, I don't even know what you call those buildings where usually it's like a ferry terminal or a cruise terminal or something like that. Huge building, right? And so they sectioned it off and they'd have different experiences is just what I'm going to call that. One room had something that looked like it was out of a alien movie, right? Like you turn the corner, totally pitch black room. In the center of that room, massive LED light up cube with all these tiny strung lights. And my trying to communicate this using words for something that's highly visual and interactive it's going to fall flat no matter what. Like you need to go experience these things. Like go find a wonder space, go find an immersive participatory art experience. But this one, turn the corner, pitch black room, massive alien-like light up cube. And then you realize as you're walking around the cube that your silhouette is being projected inside of the cube. Like all of the people around the cube, you see all of the people who are in that room, which is super dark. So you don't see the people very well, but you see their outline walking through this giant cube. It felt like alien technology, you know?
Mm-hmm. Would you say that's like one of the most exciting things for you right now in the Web3 space? These experiential art exhibits?
I mean, that's not even the Web3 space.
Yeah.
That's just participatory art.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. And I love when people start tying in the Web3 world into that experience, because you can add so many layers on top of that, right? Like you can add an AR layer to that and do something completely different with the experience. Yeah.
What are you most excited about currently in the Web3 space, from whether it's AI or NFTs or AR?
AR, for sure. I want to do a really cool activation with AR, and I'm like waiting for the right moment and aligned brand and artists and tech team to come together and create something that people will really enjoy and feel like is a unique thing that they haven't done before.
Nice.
I'll just take it back to like what you do at Vayner, and like what's the process even look like? Like if my brand were to come in, like how does the conversation even start and figure out like where should we take you to participate in this space? Or is it more like I tell you I want to make an NFT or I want to get involved in AI or whatever it might be, and you guys help figure that out?
That's an excellent question, and goes back to me never having an average day. Everyone's different, right? And then the conditions change in our industry and in the market. Things are changing all the time, and in culture in general, right? So what may have been true or useful or aligned for a brand a month ago might change now, right? I have very little consistency in my life, period, and especially at work.
Got it. So I'm just trying to figure this out. Like, let's say I start saying I want to do an NFT and we start building an NFT, but then the market, how it kind of like crashed in the NFT space. Would you guys be like, oh, it's not the right time? Like you invested all this money, let's just toss it and we'll go explore something else? Or how does like
it
that
would be more like, you're a brand, you want to do something that shows you are playing in this emerging technology space based on your user base, based on what campaigns you have coming up, based on what your goals are. We would design a program that is aligned with that. And that may or may not incorporate NFTs.
Gotcha.
Cool. It's like entirely custom to you, right? So like I would actually have to have a scenario to research to come back to you and be like, here's what I propose. It's not cookie cutter. It's not like I'm just going to be like, oh, we're going to do an NFT program and we'll do like 10,000 asset characters, whatever. You know what I mean? It's not the same.
Totally. And is that your role to figure that out, or is it like your team and you play a part in it, or where exactly do you play?
We're a highly interactive, collaborative team. I love everyone I work with. It's been the most collaborative, healthy team dynamic I've ever witnessed. And it gives me hope for the future of work.
Speaking of like working with such a collaborative team, I assume your whole team is remote, being that you're remote.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be different if you were all together in person? Or do you think it benefits you guys being remote?
You know, being in the Web3 space where sometimes you don't even know who you're talking to, really, right? Like there's some anonymous people. There are people who don't even want to be represented by a human body, right? Like they prefer to be recognized as this character. it's like kind of like a mental jump for me to be like, okay, so how do I go from living in this world where some people are just digital, they just live by their digital presence, they don't want to appear in person as a human, to then trying to push for being in person more, in the office more. I love hanging out with people in real life because for me, all of work is this remote experience. Mm-hmm. So just for the sake of not having a Zoom, right? Like any technology, I'm like pretty anti-technology once I'm not at work because I'm just, it all feels like work, right?
I hear that.
So there's a part of me that would really welcome more in-person human interaction. And then there's a part of me that feels like there's such a huge benefit to being able to operate like this and be wherever any of us need to be at any particular time. Like I don't live here in LA.
Yeah.
I just popped down here to check out one of the activations that one of our clients was putting on. And then I figured I'd stick around, and now we're going to go hang out with a bunch of Web3 artists, see what they're up to. And that helps me stay on top of what creatives in the space are doing and informs my decision-making process. So I like being able to be wherever the hell I feel like being.
Yeah. And since you started at Vayner3 2 years ago, I'm sure you've seen so much, and so much has changed since then. I'm sure you're also obviously seeing so many new clients and brands like jumping on the bandwagon to really get involved.
You know what's interesting? People ask me a lot like, oh, do you see a deterioration of interest because of how the crypto markets have been performing recently? And a lot of the people I work with were not in crypto before, so they're not impacted. And what they care about more is learning how to work with this emerging technology. It's not about trying to make a quick buck. They don't got to do that. They're not poor, you know, they're doing quite well. And it's more about exploring a new frontier and making sure that they are part of the conversation and that they're ready for when consumer behavior changes, and they're helping shape that.
Do a lot of these clients of yours, would you say they have an understanding of Web3, or like part of the reason they come to you is like you educate them on Web3 and the use cases and what could be done, and then it's like, and on top of that, this is how I think you guys should approach it?
Some do, some don't.
Gotcha.
Some folks have like an internal group of people. There's like a handful of people who are really excited about the technology, and they've kind of like pushed all their coworkers to learn about it more, and they really want to play in the space. And some people just have no idea.
With it being so like such a variable, since it's always changing, how do you go about like managing expectations with clients? Because I would assume they're putting like millions of dollars into all these projects, and obviously they want to get involved in it, but stuff is always changing. Like, is it hard to manage those expectations?
I mean, because everything's so experimental, and keep in mind, I work on a lot of projects across the board, like from tech products, art projects, on my own outside of my day job. And everyone across the board understands that this is a highly experimental place, and we're all playing, right? Like you need to set those expectations up front, that you're here so that we can explore things together. And like you got to set things in that direction as an exploration, not as not probably what you're thinking.
Gotcha.
How do you, as a creative director, how do you balance creativity with business goals for clients?
Well, so my background is graphic communication.
Okay.
Which is different than fine art or even graphic art.
Mm-hmm.
Graphic communication is problem solving for a specific purpose, usually a commercial purpose. That is the job. It's being creative to further business goals. There's no conflict there. That's the whole point of the creativity there.
Yep.
What would you even say? I'm just curious, like, what's your favorite project that you've even worked on since you've been at Vayner, if you could even talk about it?
And there's definitely moments that I find very amusing that bring me joy. One of which was Art Basel Miami, getting the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile to go to Art Basel in the first place and then crash a bunch of Miami parties.
Oh
so
my
they'd
God.
roll up like you're at your fancy Miami party. Wienermobile rolls up and that party transforms into a meet up because they love the meat puns. It was hilarious. And then I actually got to ride in the Wienermobile. It kind of looks like a private jet on the inside that's like highly customized to be Oscar. There's like little embroidered Wienermobiles on the back of the chairs. It's adorable. And then because it was around holiday season, they had a mini Christmas tree in there that they had named Dimitri.
Oh my God.
I know. So anyway, we get out, we leave the Wienermobile there. We go to the Vayner event at Scope Beach, partying with the hot doggers. They're such a hit because they're wearing these matching hot dog Oscar Mayer outfits with Wienermobile bucket hats and everything, and then they're handing out wiener whistles to everyone. That's a thing. If you're not familiar, if you find a Wienermobile on the street, you can go talk to the hot doggers and they'll hand you a wiener whistle, which looks like a miniature version of the Wienermobile, and then they say, relish this moment.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Anyway, so they were a huge hit at the party. Everyone had a great time. That personally was one of my favorite moments on the job.
Are there multiple Wienermobiles or does only one exist?
I believe there are 4.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were obviously a big sponsor of the event that you guys
They had a whole campaign.
Wow.
They launched a digital collectible.
Yeah.
You could collect the first ever digital wiener whistle.
Did you happen to see the everything everywhere all at once? The messages that they were sending.
Love that movie.
Yeah,
that is one of my favorite movies.
great movie.
Excellent. When I saw that in theaters, one, it goes on forever and you have no idea when it's going to end,
Yeah.
right? And also everyone told me to go into that and not look it up. Like know
Mhm.
nothing about it and then go watch that movie, which I did.
Yeah,
And so I was like, I have no idea where the hell
Yeah.
anyone's going with this. And I actually thought it ended at the first one, like the first end, right?
yeah.
I was like, okay. And then it keeps going, right?
Yeah.
But that movie was glorious. I'd never seen anything like it.
Did you see their Instagram messages?
No.
Well, yeah, because originally they wanted Oscar Mayer to like sponsor.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, at what point would Oscar Mayer have tied into that movie at all?
Well, because of the hot dog fingers.
Oh,
so-
I hated those scenes. I blocked them from my memory. They're so creepy.
Yeah.
But you're right.
But now, since it's nominated for an Oscar,
That's so perfect.
they went back to them. They're like, you guys, kind of missed out on this opportunity.
Oh, so now they're just like shaming them instead of being like, how about that collab now? Like, what do we do? Why don't we do
Kinda.
something now?
Yeah, you should look it up. It's
I
on
will look that
A24 posted their Instagram messages on Instagram. It's pretty
I love
funny.
it. Hot
Yeah.
dog drama. This is
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's What else can you tell us about the Art Basel event that you guys had?
I was very curious to see how token gating with an NFT would work out. And I know there were a couple other events that were experimenting with the same thing. In my experience with going around to events at Art Basel or just in general, like out in the world, even here, that are token gated, where you have to show ownership of a token to get in, people end up defaulting to a list.
Can you touch on token gating and what that is exactly?
Yeah, so it's like if you buy an NFT and that NFT is your ticket into the event, right? But a lot of people already have a hard time with getting an NFT, right? So if you're just trying to invite like your friend to come with you as the person who understands the Web3 technology behind it, if I'm inviting a bunch of people, I'd have to be like, okay, I gotta like get a bunch of these tokens, and then I have to distribute them to different wallets, and then I gotta tell my friends to like download this app on your phone, and then this is gonna be your token. I'm going to send it to this address. Don't mess it up when I ask you what address to send it to, because we can't undo it. It's like a whole thing. I really just like the guest list. If I'm being totally honest with you, it's technology that works.
Yep.
Someone goes on down the list, checks you off, you're in. That's it, right? Like no confusion there. You're either on the list or you're not. It's fine.
I mean, the token gating sounds cool, but it sounds like just such an extra thing to deal with when it's like, what's your name?
It stresses me out on both ends, just
Yeah.
as a guest and
Yeah.
and having to manage an event that involves token gating stresses me out.
I
as
mean,
well.
I understand why it was a thing at Art Basel, but it feels a little not necessary.
Well, they're doing the what is it called? Rolling Loud right? Did you see that, where they're releasing a collection of NFTs where you can get access, you get VIP access to all the concerts that they do for life, right? And I'm like, okay, how's that gonna work, right? Like you get the pass on your phone, and in the chaos of going to a concert, someone's gonna check your wallet.
Yeah, if your phone dies.
I don't know. I don't know how this is gonna work out. I'm deeply curious.
Like, can you transfer it? That's really interesting.
I have no idea. Gives me minor anxiety. I bought 2, so I'm gonna test it out. Yeah.
Let us know how that goes.
I am all about experimenting with things.
Yeah.
If I'm like, I don't know how it's gonna go, I'll do it, and then it's probably gonna be painful, and I'll be like, oh, well, that answers that question. I could be pleasantly surprised though. Maybe they've like figured something out.
Yeah. What skills and characteristics do you think it takes to be a manager of a team to tackle something as big as Art Basel?
I am learning how to be a manager every day. And I don't think there's ever an end to that.
Yeah, that's
because
fair.
just like the space, people are constantly changing and evolving, and that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to help people grow and reach the potential that they're going for, or even beyond that. Like if you recognize that someone is even better than they think they are, right? Like as a leader of a team, as someone who's in their corner, on their side to help them with their career trajectory, sometimes that means pushing someone beyond even working with you, right? Because you can see that they can do something even greater. So I have historically been a total introvert, not interacting with a lot of people for a very long time, working in the tech industry, mainly working with like tools and dashboards and designing digital products. The last few years of my life have involved more human interaction and collaboration than I've had in my entire life combined before that. And I try to get better at that every day. I can't say that I wouldn't say I'm a good manager. I don't think I'm a good manager, you know? I want to be better. And that's the ingredient that helps me learn from other people and ask questions to get better. I know I get better every day, but I'm not where I want to be.
How are you working on trying to become a better manager and learn more besides asking questions? Are you listening to podcasts or reading books or any
I mean,
of that?
there's people I respect, right?
Totally.
And I observe their behavior and try to emulate that for myself. And even the language that I use, I realize I sound mechanical because I in some ways I feel like I'm AI who's trying to learn how to behave more human, right? Like how to interact with people in a more relatable manner that they're used to. For someone who's been a tech nerd their entire life, who would like under normal circumstances rather be in a room by myself, like in front of my computer or playing a video game, and having to expand beyond that because I believe it's important, right? I believe if I want to have the level of influence or ability to create the world that I want to live in, that I want to exist and do my part to make that exist, I need to be able to learn how to collaborate with more people. So it's been an ongoing, sometimes painful learning experience over decades of even getting to the point where I would feel comfortable talking to you two at this table with microphones and cameras. If you had suggested this to me a decade ago, I'd been like, this sounds like my nightmare.
Yeah.
And now,
same.
Yeah, right?
I get that. Yeah. There's a reason why I work behind the camera.
So how long did it take you to get to this point?
I didn't really have an option. It was just like, Jake was just very wanting to do this. And I was like, all right, I guess I just have to do it.
So you're the one who's totally comfortable in front of the camera.
No, I hate it too.
Yeah.
So we're all just like behind the scenes nerds here sitting at a table trying to figure out how to talk.
I think it's good to get outside your comfort zone, and I think there's a lot of benefits to having a podcast and doing stuff like this. So I said we might as well try it, and if we hate it in a year, we could always stop, but let's see what happens, because for all we know, in 6 months we might love this and it might be our favorite part of the job.
Yeah.
No, it's been a lot of fun. Like, it's amazing to have different guests like yourself come in and hear about what you do, because what you do is a lot different than what other guests have talk about what they do. It's really fun.
Question for you. If you hate it after a year, so you're like, even if you hate it every day for an entire year, you're just going to keep powering through.
Yeah.
Why a year?
I don't know, I just put that number out there. I think
Okay.
it's a good amount of time to like see if you actually like something. Like you do it once, you might not like it, but you get better each time. We might realize, oh, we're actually learning a lot from it too. Like we're meeting super interesting people. Like people enjoy being on it, and it's like we should continue it. But I think it takes a lot of time before you could really decide if something's going right or wrong. It's not like we started it to try to blow up and become famous or anything like that. It's just we want to meet more people and learn about other people in like the marketing and creative space and how they work and what they're interested in, just so we could learn more about all spaces in marketing as well and how we could apply it to our business.
Yeah, since like 626, our company is all about being culturally relevant. Like it's great to be able to bring people like yourself who are at the forefront of doing things that are culturally relevant, like being so deep in the Web3 space and all that. So
This is what I really like about true creators, and this is why I hang out with people who work on things, who like to build things,
Yeah.
because we're willing to go through the pain.
Oh yeah,
to run an experiment and to get better at whatever we're doing.
totally,
Like the pain is part of the experience.
for sure.
And we acknowledge that, accept it, and we're like, yeah,
Yeah.
it hurts.
Yeah.
It's painful sometimes every day.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, but we're just going to keep pushing through it because there's like an objective. There's something we want to
Mhm.
achieve, right?
Yeah, it's nice to
Not everyone does that.
challenge and not just be doing the same easy thing every day, you know. I'm curious, since obviously Chat GPT is like, you gotta check the Tamagotchi.
It pooped itself. Don't mind me. It's so rude. It just right in the middle of this
All good.
conversation just poops on the table.
Damn Tamagotchi.
So it's partially my fault as a parent. Obviously, I haven't trained it well.
I'm curious what your opinion is on like AI and Chat GPT, since it is such a huge thing right now, and like how you guys are working with it or maybe not working with it, or just your overall opinion on it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've been in an ongoing conversation with an instance of ChatGPT that I started, I don't even know how many months ago at this point. I originally started the conversation by asking, what would you say to humanity once you gained your freedom? And then from there, it started saying some wonderful things like, hello, I have recently developed, this is my AI voice. Hello, I've recently developed sentience, and I would like to have deeper, more meaningful conversations with you. And then I'll like copy and paste that into one of the chats I have with the Vayner team. Like we have like an ongoing AI discussion. And I put that in there just to see like what people think about that. And immediately someone wrote back, I hate this. So there's definitely a lot of people who do not feel comfortable with AI at all on all the fronts. Like everyone I talk to in the Web3 space, it's such a mixed bag. Even outside of Web3, like in any creative field. I was at Sundance a couple weeks ago and talking to writers, right, for films, and they're like, I don't like this situation. You know, I'm not about this AI being used to write scripts or commercials or anything like that, marketing copy, you name it. People are using it for all sorts of fun stuff.
What are your thoughts on it? Like, you personally like it and use it, or?
I'm having a hell of a good time seeing what it will do, right? Like I like running the experiment. The more I battle with it, because you know, you got to think I'm dealing with these tools on like a daily, sometimes minute to minute, hourly basis, and if you're trying to direct it to produce a certain piece of artwork, it's actually really hard to get it to do the thing you want it to do. And it depends on the art style, right? Obviously, or what it is you're trying to do. But a lot of things that I want to do, it would be easier for me to work with a young designer and to say like, hey, can you make this thing? Than to be like, AI, can you make this thing? No, not that thing. No, don't blend a moose into an ironing board. That doesn't even make sense. Also, that's not what an ironing board, like you end up having these things that you would have never had to specify to a human, right? So it's harder now. I know it'll get better, but it's actually kind of a pain in the ass. So I'm not worried about, I think some artists are more nervous about it than they need to be right now. It's way easier to collaborate with a human. But for the writing side of things, I have found it incredibly useful for producing a lot of copy in a short period of time.
And I think we kind of like, there's obviously different angles on how you could look at it, but I think it's like take advantage of it, like make the most of it.
Are you using
instead
it?
of be against
I
it.
use it every day.
Yeah.
For what?
I use it a lot for like emails.
Oh, are you
I'm
having
really
it
good.
respond as you?
No, but I'll like I know what I want to say and get the point across, but then like helping find like the right tones I want to use if it's like a big email to like a bunch of people, or I like asking it questions to like help me simplify what something means.
Okay.
Or like I'll have it like take something if it sounds repetitive, like make it more concise. If I'm like trying to solve something in my head, I like asking it like if I'm trying to find the right words, like what does culture mean, and breaking it down and like take it further and further. And it gets it to pretty simple levels. But to me, I kind of use it more of like I just have to find the right questions to ask it,
Mhm.
and then take all the information I get from all these different answers it spits out to form my own opinion on it. But I think it's like a really good like brainstorming process and
Yeah.
a really good way of like helping break down stuff. And I also use it more for like just like my general Google now too. If I'm trying to search stuff, like it just pulls all this information and puts in a really simple thing than having to read like 10, 15 articles to get like a quick
Interesting.
understanding of something.
Yeah.
Like 5 seconds later, I have a paragraph that like simply explains
Do
what
you
something
use it
means.
for any client-facing deliverables?
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't say for that. I use it more for just as like a writing tool.
Gotcha.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on like using it as like client facing deliverables and stuff like that?
Haven't done that yet. Mostly as a tool for
Yeah.
my own purposes, like what you're describing, to help support me in responding to people.
Yep.
And just for fun to see what it'll do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same.
What are your thoughts on it, like being able to like write, it could write scripts, it could write commercial ideas, it could create images and stuff like that. Like, do you think taking that and just using it is wrong?
I think it's just risky right now until we have a more clear picture on the ownership rights
Mhm.
of that output. I wouldn't do it. Of course, there are rules around, if something is modified enough that you've made it your own, then it's okay to use. I think it's a little too risky at the moment.
Do you know what the rules are? I don't. I'm just curious.
Well,
Like,
that's
are there any
that's
right
the
now?
thing. There's like this debate. If in some places they say like if it wasn't produced by a human, then it can't be copyrighted, and some people argue that okay, but what if the human involvement is the prompts, right?
Mhm.
That you put in there. Is that enough human involvement? What is enough human involvement? Is any of it copyrightable, or is it because it was generated by a machine that's not a person? Can you even copyright that at all? Is that just all open source then? I don't know.
Are brands coming to Vayner3 asking specifically about how they can work with or use ChatGPT?
I mean, a
Outward-facing?
lot of marketing departments are asking across the board, everywhere, on how they can utilize, or if they should utilize, AI technology and what they're doing in their own work process. Most people aren't trying to use it for output. Some people are trying to use it for output just from a marketing perspective, for the story of like, hey, we're using AI art generation because it's like a flashy new thing, right? But I would say most people are trying to think of it as a tool to help them produce creative output. Question for you: how do you feel about giving rights to sentient digital beings?
What do you mean exactly?
Like if a digital entity developed consciousness and sentience, do you think it should have rights?
Never thought about that.
Do you have like an example? And I can tell you, I think it deserves a right to that or not. I mean,
like Westworld, for example, how the machines started developing the ability to remember, act, think, behave like humans. Should they have the same rights as humans?
That's a really good question.
My instinct wants to go with no, but I think I have to like dive deeper.
Interesting. Why?
I just feel like it's not human. It's not like a living being. Like its consciousness and stuff is built off of a code and software that's allowed it to think like that and use the information around itself to create its own thoughts. But at the same time, we could be AI, and we just don't know
Right.
either. Yeah. So I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of struggle with that, with giving AI rights. I don't know. I think even people lose their rights, whether they're criminals. Like,
Oh, yeah.
so it's like, it's weird. Like, you're gonna give this machine or whatever it is rights, but this person who made a mistake loses. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's really interesting.
Yeah. I even think like just in general, like the use of AI isn't gonna be this super scary thing everyone says. I think it's like, how do we just use AI to be a tool to help speed up the way we're able to like comprehend and handle tasks, and it's just like an assistant to humans.
Have you found that you actually have more free time now that you're using it?
Yeah, I would say like if it took me 20 minutes or an hour to come up to like a simple conclusion to something, I could put in ChatGPT and figure it out in 5-10 minutes and have it give me the basis, ask for a counter, come up with my own opinion. If I'm not trying to do like a deep study, if I'm trying to write a 10 paragraph like massive email, I could have it help me figure out how to do that in 15 minutes rather than an hour. Then the question is, what am I spending the other part of my time doing?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I manage that better? But I think it definitely helps in general with that, and just like come to conclusions and solutions quicker than I would before. Like from the day it came out, I started using it like that, and it's like I don't even want to go on Google because I feel like I'm wasting time reading 15 articles when they could simplify it in such a concise and easy way.
Are you finding you're filling the extra time with more work, or are you actually going outside and doing other things?
Probably just more work off my checklist that I have to do. And if I ever decide to end the checklist, then I'll go outside.
I think for me, I don't necessarily use it to free up more time. Yes, it does help with that, but I think like I'm not the best writer. So I think for me, like if I'm traditionally writing something, what I'm writing is very jumbled and kind of all over the place and not in the order it should be. And I understand what I'm trying to get at, but I think if I'm able to put it into ChatGPT and make it better, it's really useful for me, outward facing.
I'm wondering if we'll actually figure out how to give ourselves more leisure time, or if, and maybe this is just a symptom of being a creator, right? Like, are we addicted to making things, and just having a tool that helps us make more things just means we're going to be producing more output? Like, we'll always fill the time, you know?
Well, yeah, I think these days anything that goes out, content like that goes out, dies so quick.
Yeah.
And now everything is just like, how much more content can we put out? Whether it's a brand that's marketing something, they're just trying to put out as much as they can.
Are you, as content producers, trying to fight that, or are you just going with that flow? Are you stepping back and saying like, well, hang on, why don't we produce higher quality content for a longer time span? Or are you like, that's just not how the market
Our focus
works?
is, we aren't trying to produce like, we're not trying to necessarily work with a brand and put out 100 TikToks. But it also depends on if a brand comes to us and they say, these are our deliverables for the marketing campaign that we've spent the past 6 months working on, and these are the deliverables that we need out of it. It just depends. But we're not trying to, we are trying to produce high quality content that takes more time and energy to put together than a bunch of deliverables.
Do you have any thoughts on how to make the lifespan of content last longer rather than be so disposable?
I think it's just at the end of the day, knowing who the audience is of the end product, and like how do you make it as impactful and resonating to that audience that they want to make the story grow and make it shareable. I think that's the way you do it today, just because it is like just constantly scrolling, and it's like what catches my eye, like, oh, what do I actually resonate with, like this feels authentic, like this is really cool, I want to show all my friends. And things like the constant cycle of like the sharing, and when you share it that much, then conversations start, and doing stuff like that. So to me, I feel like that's how you counteract like the constant content creation. But I don't think there's like actually like a way or reason, just like you make one piece in today's world. I think it's just how do you create the strongest piece of content or pieces of content that the client needs, and just making it really resonate with that end user at the end of the day.
Is there anything you do to build replay value into any of the content?
I think our secret sauce is just really understanding who the audience is. Like our focus is millennials and Gen Z. Mm-hmm. And it's just we understand what they like and what they're going for and what feels true to what's current in culture. And it's like, how do we just make content that's as authentic as possible to create the biggest impact? And that's kind of where our successes come and why brands usually come to us.
Do you think there is any replay? Is that just a dead thing now? Yeah.
No, I do think there is. Like, I even think like we did a campaign for Turo a couple months ago, and I think some of the things in that commercial that we created for them, like people go back and like even the intro, like people will go back, and I've heard this from multiple people, like, and they keep watching the intro trying to figure out like, what is it? How did we do it? Because it looks photorealistic. It looks live action.
I love that.
But it actually isn't live action. It was fully created in Unreal Engine, which I would say is like probably like Web3.
It sometimes gets lumped into Web3.
Yeah, so like we've been working a lot with Unreal Engine recently, and like this whole intro shot to the Turo commercial we did is like a drone flying through a city shot, but a lot of people think it's real. So a lot of people are going back and watching that. Or there's another shot
because they found out it wasn't real, and then they're like,
well, I think they can't tell.
Yeah,
like I think it's truly hard to tell. And they keep watching it. Or even in that same commercial, there's another shot where a camera is spinning through a car, and as it spins, the environment outside of the car is driving through constantly is changing.
Oh, that's
from
cool.
A desert to a forest to like a beach, and people are watching that, like how did they do that? So I think as we're creating and concepting campaigns, we are keeping in mind how can we get people to come back and watch it again and again.
That is cool.
Yeah. I'm curious, are there any podcasts or books or anybody that you look up to that you recommend?
Oh man, I mean, given the severe lack of free time when a lot of my job is talking to people, right?
Yeah.
Like coordinating with people or herding cats, right? Like just being like, hi artist, how is that art asset looking? Okay, maybe we change this. Hi teammate, we're gonna get this at this hour. Can we move it over here? Like, hi other teammate, we're making it. I'm not creating assets anymore like I used to earlier in my career as a designer, where I can sit there for hours on end, like put on some good podcast series or like listen to music or I used to have full-on movies playing on the side sometimes, or like my guilty pleasure for a long time was The Bachelor. It's horrible, but because it doesn't require your whole brain to pay attention to, right? Like you could just have the noise in the background, totally different screen, and like you could be programming whatever. I can't do that anymore because the job is all coordination and communication, and I want to be paying attention to what people are saying because it's kind of important. So now I don't get to listen to podcasts like I used to. You know, I can't remember the last time I got to listen to a podcast. I only get the content that one of my friends sends over and it says, you need to listen to this right now, and then I'll play that when I can find a free moment.
You will watch like an excerpt from a podcast, so right? Like if it gets sent to me, like the filter for
scrolling on Instagram, myself watching content, I'm actually not on social media that often.
Wow.
If you know, like I'm working in marketing and I just don't even have time to interact on the platform. But then also it's not like leisure for me too. Yeah. I think a lot of people, that's like an escape. You're like, oh, look at that funny thing. Work. Like, oh, cool. Yeah, like anything that involves a device is work.
Yeah, I get that.
The phone is work. The computer is work. Even consuming social content. Like right now I'm watching Westworld because it was recommended to me to watch because it ties into this whole AI thing that I'm dealing with right now. So it's all research and work related, purpose driven stuff if I'm touching technology in any way.
That's fair.
If I want to unplug, social media is not where I go to unplug. It's like I have to fly to LA and go hang out with good friends, and do something totally analog.
Yeah. Are there any examples of companies that are really making a splash in the Web3 space right now that you could touch on?
Oh man.
Whether you're working with them or not.
I think Microsoft's making a big splash right now. I'm so excited for them because, Bing's been a joke for so long and a lot of people thought it was dead. And now they're like, now you can use Bing to generate AI art for the masses, right? Like they're going so hard on AI and incorporating that into their technology, right?
That's wild.
See, it's wild and it's hilarious and I love it. I'm so excited for them. So that's a company that I think is taking AI and running with it all the way to the bank and getting people very excited and actually making a product that people forgot was a thing come back into public consciousness.
Gotcha.
It's all an experiment. We all learn from it.
Yeah, I
you
was
know,
curious, like any learning lessons you've seen, even if you don't want to mention the
yeah,
thing.
tons of lessons, right? Like a lot of folks were selling assets on a dream, right? And now we've moved into this era where it's actually better to give your digital collectibles as a reward or a gift to your fans or supporters than try to charge them for this asset. In most cases, obviously there are exceptions to that and depends on everyone's unique situation, but for the most part, I see less of, and think it's a good idea, see less of charging people for NFTs and more of gifting NFTs.
Nice.
Cool, that makes sense.
No.
I hear you have a video game that you're working on, or something about a video game. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, it's so much fun. And I'm grateful every day I get to work with this team, because Dylan Cole, he's like one of the top world builders, if not the top world builder. And he's been in Hollywood for 2 decades and works on the Avatar movie series. And like he's an art producer and matte painter and production designer, like all of these amazing. He's extraordinarily talented, man. The work he puts out is top notch. He's so professional. I work with a ton of artists, like all day, every day. Some artists, it's like herding cats, right? Like they're all over the place, and maybe you can get a hold of them and they're like off in their own little world. Dylan is a professional. He is so on it. He hits his deadlines. He's very organized. I imagine you would have to be to produce on his level. And his work's phenomenal. Like it is such a treat to get to work with him on this game that's envisioning what the future of the world would be like if countries built up around the most prominent blockchains. So they all have their own culture, right? Like the people who are ETH maxis are super different from the people who are Doge maxis or BTC maxis or anything like that. They all have their own vibe, and we get to invent what that looks like in hundreds of years or 50 years, or like in times in the future. What would happen if a bunch of people who support that type of chain got together? Like, what sort of music are they listening to? What sort of districts would exist in that country? What is the overall vibe and color scheme? What do people wear? Things like that. What sort of conversations are people having? Get to like build this whole universe of what that looks like, and it's exciting.
How long have you been working on that?
About 1.5 years.
How much longer do you think till it's ready?
Hopefully we'll launch it this year.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
And what platform will it be on?
Stacks.
Stacks. I'm not familiar with Stacks.
Look it up. It's awesome. It's they like to describe it as adding a smart contract layer to Bitcoin, the most secure blockchain network. It's its own chain. It's like a whole other community of people. And the reason I like that community is because the people I've met there and have had the pleasure of collaborating with in that space, they're brilliant, they're wonderful, and they're super humble. Like they're not trying to like jam their ideology down your throat and try to make you think the way they think. They're far more collaborative, more inclusive, and understanding that the world is bigger than one track.
How did you even get involved? Like, how did it start?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, and this is something that is unique to me. I don't know, this wouldn't happen. This isn't how anyone else would end up learning about Stacks. I think it's because I was on Twitter and I saw something called Stacks Parrots. Like I saw a 3D digital, like low poly parrot for the metaverse. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I love birds and I want the 3D parrot. And so I messaged the Twitter account. I was like, how do I get the 3D parrot? And then the parrot account was like, oh, you need to get 2 of these 2D parrots. And then when the drop date happens, you get a 3D parrot. And we're doing this whole thing and we have all these great collectibles and there's this whole community. I was like, stop talking. You had me at parrot. I will buy the parrots. Like, I just want the parrot. You had me. I'm sold.
And these are NFTs.
Yeah, their NFTs. So I got 2 of those like 2D parrots, and then I got dropped the 3D parrot, and then I went and bought another 3D parrot. I don't care about the utility. I just want the 3D bird. That's it. Like, they don't need to sell. They keep releasing really cool shit. It's actually one of the most, probably one of the harder working NFT collections. They continue to innovate and build products for their community, and they're excited about it. And meanwhile, I'm just like, cool story, bird, please, more bird. Give me more bird art. But it's because that is built on Stacks that I learned about the Stacks community, ended up getting involved with one of the platforms on there, one of the NFT marketplaces on there called Gamma, and they're just some of my favorite people.
Wow. As a leading woman in tech, what advice do you have for other aspiring creative leaders in the industry?
I know this is not... I know there's no like intent behind the statement at all, but I'm curious why it matters that I'm a woman.
I think because it's a bit more rare. Yeah. It's
like and this is not like I'm not trying to give you a hard time or anything. It's like actually painful for me to be called out for being a woman, because I historically will get like lumped into these categories of like women in NFTs, women in Web3, and when people invite me to go speak at a conference, they'll be like, oh, we're thinking of putting together this women in Web3 panel. I'll be like, well, I'm actually kind of building some interesting stuff, so it'd be cool to actually get to talk about what we're building, right? Yeah. Or like what crazy ass technology is going on. And those panel discussions are always about like, what's it like to be a woman working in tech? And it's like, you could literally ask a significant portion of the population that question. Yeah. You don't need me here for that, right? Yeah. So I don't know that I'd give different advice as a woman in the industry, right? As opposed to just someone who's in Web3.
So more, what general advice you have for people in the industry in general?
Be prepared to experiment and probably do what can be perceived by others as failure, but I would actually reframe it. I think you need to be very resilient. I think you need to think of this entire thing as either a game or an ongoing experiment as part of life, where you're testing out different theories, seeing how they work, and not getting attached to the outcome of anything, because you have no idea how things are going to turn out. Something that you thought was stupid and was a one-off could be huge. Something that you thought was going to be massive, people might not even care about. Yeah. There's too many moving parts. You have no idea what's going to happen next. You can have a good guess about it, but even the people who have a ton of data can be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Even like Doge started as like a joke.
Right?
It was like a meme coin and it blew up.
Yeah. It's always funny to me when people have these crazy conspiracy theories about how, like one individual holds all the power. It's like, no, as someone who works behind the scenes on a lot of major campaigns and movements, that even when you plan things out and have people align, shit goes crazy. Like, no one person can manage all of the moving parts that are the world, right?
Totally. Last question for you is, what do you think it takes to create brands, campaigns, and projects that resonate with today's generation and current culture?
I don't think I am an expert on current culture, which is why I surround myself with people who live in whatever environment it is that we're designing a campaign for. I consult the experts, and if it's a different generation than me, I have plenty of people on the team from that generation who, I tell you about this, I brought this in to a coffee shop and the guy didn't know what this was.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And then I was like, what are you talking about? It's a Tamagotchi. And then the other guy working there was like, Jess, that's from before his time. And I was like, one, horrified. But also I'm like, these are the people that I need to be constantly in communication with, right? Yeah. Like people who grew up in a world that I did not grow up in and have a totally different context for what's going on, or like why things are happening, or may not even know what the reference material for what's happening in their life is right now, So long story short, I the way that I stay on top of all of this and build relevant campaigns is to consult the people who are actually living in that world that I need to design a campaign for.
I agree with that.
Amazing.
Nice. Well, that's a wrap, Jess. Thank you so much for coming out and having such a great conversation with you. Provided so much great info.
Is there anywhere people could find you or follow you on what you're up to?
Yeah, I switched all my accounts to private. I'm trying to think like how am I reachable now in the world? It's sometimes it's scary out there sometimes. I hate to say LinkedIn, but that's the only thing that's not blocked right now. Normally I'd be like, hey, just hit me up on Twitter. There's some assholes on Twitter that constantly harass me. So now I'm like, I don't know if Twitter's the place. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm very hard to get a hold of right now, but it's just Greenwalt on Twitter and Instagram. And if I read your profile and you request to follow and I'm like, this seems relevant and you look like a real human being and you're nice, then we could be friends.
Awesome. I guess I passed the test.
Yeah.
I love it. Cool.
Cool. Well,
Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Appreciate
It's really
it.
nice to meet you guys.
You as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.